phones are turned off or silenced so that we don't have interruptions. After this, the authors are going to be going outside and they'll be able to answer questions and have a book signing. So we are going to have to clear out this room for the next presentation. So we will ask you at the end everybody to move out.
Are we going to ask them for questions?
Yeah.
Are they full of questions?
They will.
Some of them look questioning.
Yeah. So the plan is to have at least 15 or 20 minutes of questions. The first question, though, I have for you, John, is your last book talked about your experience with transmagnetic stimulation. And my question to you, and this actually then leads into Karen and John, is you write in your book about neurodiversity and the movement towards Ari's discussions nationally about how it's really okay to have autism and kind of a pushback. So my first question to you, John, is would you get rid of your autism if you could?
Well, first of all, to be clear here, I said it was okay to be autistic when that fellow Ari was a very small child. So I think it's incorrect to attribute that to him. But in Switched On, I wrote a story that is in part about my journey with an experimental therapy devised by some neuroscience professors at Harvard Medical School that was aimed at changing emotional intelligence, the ability to perceive emotional cues in other people. And it's interesting how controversial that idea is. Every one of you has seen, I'm sure, at some point, a deficiency in yourself that you wish to remedy. Maybe you think you're fat, you want to be thin. Maybe you think you're weak and you want to be strong. Maybe you dream of wanting to run a marathon, but you collapse after 100 yards and you dream of having that stamina. And when you express that dream to anyone, your friends, your family, those are things that everyone encourages. Everyone says, yeah, it's great if you want to be healthier. It's great if you want to run faster. It's great if you want to be stronger. But for some reason, we accept as immutable and unchangeable anything to do with our intellect. So you might be horribly offended at what your uncle says to you. Maybe it's what your father says to you, and maybe your mother says, oh, your daddy, he's 70 years old, he's not going to change now. Your uncle, he's been that way all his life, he's not going to change. Maybe you think, I'm just a dummy when it comes to math, and people say, well, it's just intelligence, it's just how it is. You're never going to change it. You're never going to be good at math, and you ought to just accept it. And why is it that we just accept those things when we are so ready to embrace the idea that we could be stronger or fitter? Why wouldn't we be able to be more cognitively fit, as it were? And I think that Switched On is one of the first books to explore that question from a first-person perspective. What if we could change our intelligence in different ways? Would you want to do it?
Yes.
And of course, a lot of people think, if I said to you, would you want to be smarter if you could? You would say, well, of course I'd want to be smarter. It's like asking if I want to be stronger. Of course I want to be stronger. But there's a price to everything. And sometimes if you're more insightful, you're going to see things that maybe you wished you never knew. And I think that that's also the story of Switched On. And so those of you who follow my work in autism science with the government and in guiding autism research, you know that I'm a strong proponent of developing therapies to help all kinds of autistic people. And that means I support developing medical therapies to help people with intestinal trouble, developing therapies to to relieve epilepsy, which is life-threatening for many autistic people, to develop therapies to help some autistic people make friends and get jobs. And so a therapy that would help us read emotions in other people, that's an obvious fit for some people. And yet, if we had that thing and it seemed like a wonderful gift, would it truly be a gift once you received it? Or would there be things you wished you didn't know? And I guess that's the mystery of the Switched On book. And so it, I think, led to your question, would you cure autism if you could? And I think that many people ask that. And I have to be careful in answering, because I am one of the people charged by our government with both defining autism for the world and with guiding the course of research, and that of course includes what is our objective. And I have to say, when I say stuff like this to you, that I am not speaking to you as an agent of the U.S. government. I am giving you my personal opinion. However, having said that, I can also say to you that I do my very best to make my personal opinion the policy of our government. But for now, it's not. My belief is that it is not realistic to talk about curing autism. Autism, from all we know, is a structural neurobiological difference in the body. It's not even a difference in the brain. It's a difference that is all-encompassing within us. We are different in our guts. We are different in our central nervous system. We are different in our brains. We're different everywhere. So to take that away is not realistic. What I think is realistic and what I think is constructive is for us to ask the question, what can we do to relieve the ways autism makes us suffer? What can we do to relieve the ways autism disables us? And what can we do to deliver the highest quality of life and best happiness for every person living with autism in this country? And that means that we have to address potentially different needs between autistic people living with autism and family members of autistic people who may not be themselves autistic. So those are the questions I think we should be asking in our research, not how to cure autism. And I think that if we recognize that, we move away from something that is deeply troubling to many autistic people, which is the idea that on the one hand, you might say, I have such a seriously disabled child, if my child could speak like you, I would say my child is cured, and that's what I mean. But then there are people who speak like me who say, when I hear you say you want to cure autism, you are saying you want to get rid of people like me. And I think that if we focus on quality of life and relieving disability, we can recognize that as a leading world society, we have a moral duty to do those things, and it should not be subject to dispute. And I think we can move away from talk of cure. And I think that Karen and John in their book, I think they present that case eloquently. So that's, I guess, what I would say about that.